Welcome back, Chapter 13. Catherine. I flipped through the book and I ordered, "Tell me your life story, Mom," realizing how few questions I can answer. I could write down that my mother loves anchovies and hate mustard unless it's the stone ground kind. She laughs uncontrollable whenever Amy Schmoosher movie Trainwreck plays, even though she's seen it a dozen times. If she could travel anywhere in the world, it would be to Italy. But the whole first part of her life, the years that shaped her into the woman she is today, are a mystery to me. I've never thought of my mother as sneaky or untruthful, yet in the past 2 days, I've learned how skilled she is at keeping secrets. My mother led me to believe she had a small social life, that she occasionally dated and went to a bar. Melanie revealed that to be fiction. I also believe my mother wanted me to have a social life, though I don't have a lot of close friends, and it's not like I have extra money to get mani-pedis with the girls or take weekend trips to New York. My mother always seemed happy when I met a classmate for a drink or went out on a date, except for this. My mom didn't like Ethan, the only guy I'd ever been serious about. She never said so explicitly, but I sensed it. Ethan did too. I broke up with Ethan for a few reasons. The main one was because he drank too much. He worked as a bartender, and though he talked about becoming a photographer, he didn't do anything to advance that career plan beyond buying an expensive camera. Ethan was charismatic and funny and easygoing, the kind of guy who turned every night into a party. He had sleeve tattoos with red and purple flowers, skulls, and diamondback snakes, and the Queen of Hearts. He wore a woven blue leather bracelet and a single gold hoop earring. He seemed composed of color. He infused it into my life. The night we broke up, the night he broke my heart, was also our 1-year anniversary. He told me to meet him at a French bistro as soon as I got off of work. I thought maybe he was going to ask if I wanted to get our own place and live together. He'd been hinting about it. I hadn't decided yet how to answer him. I arrived a few minutes early and was seated at a table covered by a crisp white cloth. The waiters wore dark suits and the table were set with multiple forks and spoons. I ordered a glass of rose and decided to try oyster for the first time in my life. For the next 30 minutes, I slowly sipped my wine and discreetly checked my cell phone to see if Ethan had replied to my texts and calls. I'd never taken a walk of shame the morning after a hookup, but I sure felt like I was taking one on that endless journey out of the restaurant when it was obvious to everyone around me I'd been stood up. When I arrived home, Ethan was passed out on our living room couch with the plastic bucket we used to hold cleaning supplies on the floor next to him. It was barely 7:30 p.m. It wasn't the first time I seen Ethan like this. Some nights he forgo alcohol completely, but when he drank, the taste of alcohol overrode the internal shutoff valve most people possess, the one that makes them stop after 2 or 3 or 4. My mother told me Ethan had shown up shortly after she arrived home from work, saying he forgotten his phone here the night before. When my mom excused herself to go take a shower, he helped himself to a drink. Mom and I generally only keep beer in the house, but that night we happened to have a bottle of good Russian vodka. One of my mother's longtime customers who was from Moscow had given it to her as a gift before he moved back to Russia. Ethan liked tequila, bourbon, and beer. I even seen him drink a wine spritzer once when there were no other options, but his favorite was vodka. He was drunk before I even headed to the restaurant. It wasn't the first time Ethan had disappointed me, but I vowed it would be the last. When we broke up, I blocked him, but I never deleted his number from my contacts. Now I pull out my phone and scroll to his name. A touch of a button is all it takes to unblock someone. I hesitate, thinking of the empty weeks following our breakup when it felt like all the sunlight had drained out of my days. I would not have gotten through them if it hadn't been for my mother. She sat beside me on the couch, promising me I'd forget Ethan and find someone else better. Ethan isn't the kind of guy I want my daughter to end up with, she told me, and she sounded so certain that it cemented my resolve. Without my mother's voice in my ear, I probably would have gone back to Ethan and had my heart broken all over again a few more times before I got out for good. I was so focused on my mother's dislike of Ethan that I never paid much attention to his dislike of her. My mother had my best interest at heart. I took that for granted. But now I find myself thinking about something Ethan said shortly before we broke up. I hated acknowledging the tension between the two people I cared about most, so I denied it. She never even gave me a chance, he said. I could stay home tonight and try to talk to my mother again, but I no longer trust that she's the best source of information about herself. I pressed the button to unblock Ethan. All these months later, I'm desperate to know what he meant. I slowly type out a text. Hey, it's Catherine. Long time. So I have something to ask you. Let me know if you have a few minutes to talk. I send it before I lose my nerve. If someone blocks you, your text message to them won't ever be delivered. It'll linger in ether, in the wispy gray areas of cyberspace between transmission and landing. My message reaches Ethan. I know, because when we were dating, we set our phones to notify each other whenever we'd read the message we sent. Ethan never changed that setting. He reads my messages about 30 seconds after I send it. It takes him only a moment to reply. I'm working tonight if you want to come by. Ethan has a new tattoo on the inside of his forearm, an intricately etched compass, and his hair is now long enough to draw into a short ponytail. He looks good. The bar won't get crowded until 8 or 9 p.m., but a handful of people have arrived after happy hours. I slide onto the stool, watching Ethan laugh and chat with two women while he makes them lemon martinis. He's great with customers. It's one reason why he earns so much in tips. I spend a lot of hours perched on a stool here watching for Ethan to get off work. This bar has always seemed festive to me, with its strings of milk glass globe lights running across the ceiling and classic rock playing. Ever since my mother diagnosed, though, it's like I'm wearing glasses that reveal the darker underside of the world. Now I notice the grime on the floor, the sour smell of old beer, the bald guy sitting alone in the corner frowning at his phone. He's close to my mother's age and he's rail thin. Maybe his genes have turned against him too. Maybe his hair loss and lack of body fat are due to chemotherapy. At the sound of my name, I turn my head. The wide wooden bar between us saves me from having to offer an awkward hug. Ethan leans down and rests on his elbow, so we're eye to eye. There's nothing but casual warmth in his expression. It's the same face he wears to greet loyal customers. That, more than anything he could say, tells me he has moved on. I'm the one who broke up with him, yet I feel a tinge of regret. Maybe it's because I haven't met anyone else, and I'm confident Ethan has. Women seem to love him, in part because he's masculine without being the slightest bit domineering. You look great, he tells me. For a moment, I'm grateful I dabbed on lip gloss and outlined my eyes with a coppery brown pencil before I came in. Then I remind myself I'm here to get information, not flirt with my ex. Ethan offers me a drink and I tell him I'll take a Blue Moon on tap. We chat another few moments, with Ethan breaking away now and then to mix a gin and tonic or uncap a beer. I'm in no rush. I sent my mother a text telling her I was seeing a movie with a friend, so she won't be expecting me home for dinner. The question I have for Ethan isn't one I want to casually throw out. I need to study his face while he answers. But I also want to linger because being around Ethan back in this old familiar setting is loosening memories for me. Like the one when Ethan first met my mom, I thought it went well. He was polite and friendly. He took off his shoes when he came into the apartment without being asked, and he held open the door for me to walk through when we left. My mother seemed to approve of him. When did that shift? Ethan and I grew serious quickly. We were opposites in many ways, which made me feel like we fit together well. Our schedules were opposite too, and that prevented us from seeing each other more than twice a week or so. But we text throughout the day and talked on the phone every night, usually when Ethan had a slow moment at work. My mom asked how I felt about him one morning after I came home from spending the night at his place. She was getting ready for work, and before she walked out the door, she paused and asked if Ethan was the kind of guy I could see myself ending up with. I'd taken it as a sincere inquiry. She wanted to know how much I liked him. My answer was in that spirit too. It's too soon to know. But now it feels like she stuck a splinter under my skin with that question. It made me more attuned to Ethan's drinking and lack of ambition. It took me out of the present and into the future when the very qualities I loved in him could turn into liabilities. My mother had already answered the question for herself. She told me so when I broke up with Ethan. Ethan isn't the kind of guy I want my daughter to end up with. I know how she viewed Ethan. It's finally time for me to glimpse the picture he held of my mother. A few minutes later, I get my chance. Ethan walks around the bar and slides onto the stool next to mine. I know you didn't just come here for a beer. I nod. I practiced how to say this on the way here, arranging and rearranging my words, but they still sounded stiff. This was a long time ago, but you and my mom never really hit it off. I guess I've been wondering why you didn't like her. Ethan reaches for my beer and takes a sip, twisting the glass around so his lips are in the exact spot mine touched a minute ago. It feels oddly intimate. Instead of an answer, he replies with a question. Did she mess up another relationship for you? My surprise quickly recedes as anger rushes in. My mother had nothing to do with Ethan getting drunk and failing to show up for our special anniversary dinner. She was right about him all along. He's still a boy, not a man. My mother didn't. He interrupts me. Ever wonder how convenient it was that your mom happened to have a Russian customer who gave her a bottle of Boogaloo Gold the same day as our anniversary? I'm taken aback. It's true that in all the years my mother has worked as a waitress, the only gifts customer had given her are tips. But Ethan's suggestion is ludicrous. What are you saying? Are you implying my mother bought the vodka herself so you'd get drunk and I'd break up with you? As riled up as I am, I know this to be true. Ethan doesn't hold grudges. He's not petty, and he no longer wants to be in a relationship with me. He must have some other motivation for disparaging my mother. Perhaps it's a simple matter of not wanting to take responsibility for his own role in his destruction. Coming here was a mistake. I should be at home with my mom, spending one of the limited evenings we have left together. She didn't pour the vodka down my throat. Wait a minute. Let me read that again. She didn't pour the vodka down your throat, Ethan. I stand up and begin to walk away. No, Ethan calls after me, but she poured me my first drink that night. I spin around. He is staring at me levelly. There's no malice in his gaze, but I do see pity. And it convinced me of the truth of his words. What he says next shocks me to my core. And I think she might have drugged me. That's the end of chapter 13. Ooh, Catherine is learning some stuff about her mother. Well, did her mother sabotage her relationship with Ethan? I wouldn't be surprised because she grew up in toxic family. Her mama was mean. And the daddy couldn't leave her. So she bitter. And she don't want to see her daughter happy. So why not sabotage it, right? Or is she sabotaging her daughter's relationship because her and James didn't work out? Ooh, we gonna have to find that out, right? So I'm gonna have to see you in, in the next chapter, which is 14. Bye.